I'm going to be decluttering 5 eyeshadows from some of my favorite indie brands, and this is hypothetical as I rarely really declutter my single eyeshadows as I do a lot of swatch comparisons, so I do like to have quite a variety and I really get rid of things that I might need for comparisons later. But this is just hypothetically speaking. This is based off of the video idea that I've seen different creators, I'm not sure if I did one like this before, but where they declutter one eyeshadow palette from different brands. So today there's going to be 3 brands I'm going to be talking about, and of course let me know in the comments below if you would like to see me do other brands. I can definitely do that, though I want to keep it to brands that I have a decent amount of singles from. So the brands I'm going to be talking about today is Devinah Cosmetics, Terra, and Clionadh Cosmetics. So let's get right into it. These are the 15 eyeshadows that I would be decluttering, and I think you can already tell from this that there's a little bit of a theme in general just based on my preference, and this is going to be heavily preference based. I don't really gravitate towards darker shimmer shadows, even if they're sparkly and shifty. It's just not really something I use. I think my preference has changed quite a bit over the past few years. So I used to love especially black-based multichromes. I'm not really into those as much anymore. I'm definitely more into some iridescent shades. That being said, there is an iridescent shade and some lighter pastel shades in here. And this is not to say that I don't like these shadows or the quality or anything like that. Really, the number one reason is going to be the color, then secondary probably texture, and third performance, or at least for the most part. And some of these shades were purchased and some of them were sent to me in PRs. So let's get right into the shades, starting off with Clionadh Cosmetics. The first shade I have is Spire. It's a beautiful black-based multichrome. It has quite a bit of a reflect to it. It's quite shifty, but it is just a darker purple, and it's not really something I gravitate towards, especially not like a day-to-day, more of an evening time kind of look, but it is just not really a shade that I gravitate towards. And also they have created a light version of their jeweled multichromes, and not all of them have a light version, but I believe that one is one of the ones that does, and I do prefer the light formula for sure. And then same thing with this next one, the shade Gothic. It is a beautiful shifty shade. I feel like this one's a little less shiny than the previous shade and also some of the other black-based multichromes that Clionadh has. And again, this one is just a little bit more of a smoky eye kind of eyeshadow. Not really something I would really gravitate towards. I really tend to do these kinds of eye looks a lot. So for these, I really like a kind of lighter shimmer to put right in the center or the inner portion of my lid. So this is not really an eyeshadow that I could do too much with. The next shade is Topiary, and the moment I swatched this one, I began to question my choice because it is a stunner. It is very vibrant. It's a very beautiful green, and I love me some greens, but I feel like I have a lot of shades like this, and I don't necessarily think this one is very shifty, so that's why this one ended up in here. This next one also pains me to put in here, and that is Azure. This one is a deep iridescent multichrome, which I absolutely love their deep iridescent multichromes. I think they're some of the best shades. They're so vibrant and smooth, but they really pack a punch, and they're just very versatile without being too topper-like or quite black-based or an in-between. Shade in particular is here because I just think it's not as vibrant, specifically as Beaute, for example, which is also one of the shades that is in the deep iridescent formula. So I just wish this one had a little bit more of that luminosity where it almost looks like it's kind of glowing to it. And then lastly, the 5th shade is Luminaire, and this one is from their Series 1 Iridescent Multichromes. And while I can appreciate this one for its smoothness, I would just rather reach for something that's smooth and shiny and maybe a little sparkly, not quite textured, for sure, a little bit more satin-like, and that is just not my preference on day-to-day. I want a little bit more sparkle than this. That being said, you can definitely have lots of fun layering this one, so you could put this one down and put something over it, and it'll be like a really nice, fun look. I just prefer some of my other iridescent shades, whether that's from Clionadh or from other brands. Moving on to Devinah, the first 3 shades, I believe, came in the same collection, and they're some of the most satin-like shades they have in terms of their multichromes that they have to offer. And these 3 shades have a beautiful sheen for sure, don't get me wrong, but they are just a little bit more powdery, and they will benefit from a tacky primer for sure. But again, this is completely my preference, and I'm sure there's people that prefer this kind of finish, but just not me personally. That being said, I think they're really beautiful. They're still punchy in terms of the color and the vibrancy, especially Water Mist. I mean, it is such a beauty. The next shade is Pixie Stick. So this one just feels very powdery. It's like that pale pink with a gold reflect. It is a beautiful shade, but again, not my preference. Moving on to the next shade, this is Rainbow Blossom. While it is definitely shiny and beautiful and not quite black based, it has a little bit kind of like an in-between base to it. I don't really have much of a reasoning except for if I was to look at my collection and only pick out the shades that stand out to me, this shade would not stand out to me. and that's really the only reason. I have nothing else to say about it. It's a beautiful shadow. I love greens, but it's not a standout shade. So the last shade from Devinah is Seance, and this one, I don't even think that they sell these anymore. I believe there was about 5 or 6 shades of these, and this is a dark blue to purple shifting shade. It is quite a bit of a darker shade, and that's why it would be on the chopping block. No other reason other than it is a darker shimmer shadow. So moving on to Terra Moon's, the first shade is X-Ray. It is such a stunning shade for sure. It is a little bit more like iridescent slash pastel leaning, is a little bit more color to it. I would prefer to own true iridescence than this shade in particular. I also feel like I've seen this shade done and done over and over again. And then the next shade is Aquarius Moon. Again, it is a dark blue shifting to kind of a purple. It's kind of actually interesting grayish purple almost, and it is just a darker shimmer shadow. Not really into it. And also it is a little bit on the flakier side, so if I was to choose between like this one and a smoother version of that one, I would definitely go for the smoother version. And then the next shade is Hyperspace. This shade is so stunning. It is so beautiful. It's so shifty. It's quite unique. It is a beautiful, beautiful shade. It's a little bit on the flaky side. It's got a little bit more of a black base to it, so not really something I would reach for. But again, that being said, it is a stunner. But unfortunately, just all the things together, not really a shade I reach for. The next shade is Venus in Chains. This is a newer shade, and I think this shade is absolutely beautiful. It's got a lot of dimensionality to it, not only a shift, but there's also different sparkles in it. But this one does stain, and it feels a little bit thicker to the touch, which is a little bit unlike for Terra Moon's formula. So in terms of formulation, this one is just like not my favorite. And then the last shade is Olympus Mons, and this one, it's a stunner. It's really punchy. It's really vibrant. It's really shifty. I think this one is a little bit more day friendly, but it has like a little bit of a darker base to it almost. And it is a little bit on the flaky side. And I feel like I have similar shades to this. For example, like Toucana from Devinah, where it has a lighter base. It still has that vibrancy and shine, and it's smooth. And I just prefer other variations of this shade. So those are all the 15 shadows that I hypothetically just decluttered. My heart, definitely swatching them, I was like, ooh and ah, these are really beautiful, but it's just like, I just can't quite bring myself like in the morning when I'm about to go into the office to put on some of these shades, even though the quality is beautiful. And these 3 brands do create just beautiful eyeshadows all around. I mean, I have probably, I want to say at least like 100 single shadows from Clionadh. Probably at least another 100 from Terra Moon's. And then Devinah, maybe around-ish, 100-ish, something like that too. Actually, it'd be really interesting to count. But let me know in the comments below if there's any single eyeshadows you would declutter. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.